All right, let's dive into this. Today we're going deep into the world of guerrilla warfare.
Oh, wow.
And no, we're not talking about,
No.
jungle combat tactics.
hmm
We're going even deeper than that
Okay.
into the psychological side of things.
The psychological side.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's a fascinating area.
It really is.
Really, this isn't just about brute force.
Right.
It's about winning over the minds of the people,
Yeah.
turning them into allies, and ultimately using that influence to reshape the political landscape.
Exactly. And we're going to be using a declassified CIA manual called Psychological Operations in Guerrilla Warfare as our guide.
Ah, interesting.
Now, this document was actually created for the Freedom Commandos in Nicaragua back when they were fighting against the Sandinista government.
Wow.
Talk about a high-stakes situation.
Yeah, this manual really opened my eyes to how guerrilla warfare, it's not just about battles.
Yeah.
It's a sophisticated game of chess where the minds of the population are the most important pieces.
Okay, so let's unpack that analogy. How does the manual suggest that these guerrilla groups achieve this?
Right.
It's not like they're handing out pamphlets on the street corner, right?
Right. It's much more subtle and strategic than that.
Okay.
One of the key concepts they introduce is this idea of the propagandist combatant guerrilla.
Oh.
Think of it like this. Imagine a social media star who can sway millions with their opinions.
Right.
These guerrillas are basically doing the same thing, but with a much higher stakes message.
Hold on. So they're basically training their fighters to be master debaters.
Absolutely.
That's a whole new level of psychological warfare.
It's not enough to just be a skilled fighter.
Right.
They need to be able to articulate their movement's goals in a way that resonates with the people. The manual actually suggests that they should be able to give 5, even 10 logical reasons to support their actions.
Wow. They're turning persuasion into a weapon.
Yeah.
They're not just fighting an oppressive regime.
Right.
They're actively dismantling its narrative and replacing it with their own.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And that brings us to another fascinating concept from the manual, armed propaganda.
Armed propaganda. Now, before you get any ideas,
Right.
this isn't about intimidating people with weapons.
Right. It's almost the opposite.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued.
Okay.
How do you use weapons for propaganda without resorting to threats?
So imagine this. A guerrilla unit enters a rural town.
Okay.
Instead of brandishing their weapons, they explain that those weapons are there solely to protect the people from an oppressive regime.
Right.
They're showcasing themselves as protectors, not aggressors.
They're kind of flipping the script,
Exactly.
reframing themselves as the shield between the people and the oppressive regime.
Exactly.
Right.
And it goes even further than that.
Okay.
They might work alongside the locals, explain how their weapons work, and even provide services like basic medical care.
Right.
It's all part of building trust and fostering a sense of we're in this together.
Okay, now we've got the weapons, we've got the message. But how did they get that message to the people?
Right.
That's where these armed propaganda teams come in, right?
You got it. These are carefully selected groups of guerrillas,
Okay.
handpicked not for their combat skills,
Right.
but for their powers of persuasion.
Okay.
Think of them as the ultimate influencers, spreading the movement's message and swaying public opinion.
So instead of prioritizing soldiers, they're prioritizing skilled communicators who can really connect with people.
Exactly.
That's
But-
pretty smart.
And their recruitment strategy is just as interesting.
Okay.
They specifically target people from all walks of life, peasants, students, professionals.
So they're building a diverse team that reflects the population they're trying to win over.
Exactly.
So-
And part of their message focuses on how the Sandinista government is actually harming these groups,
Okay.
preventing them from working and providing for their families.
Yeah.
It's a classic us versus them narrative.
Ah, the age-old tactic of creating a common enemy to unite people. Clever.
Right.
But they don't stop there, do they?
No, they don't.
The manual also talks about these front organizations, right?
Right. Yeah.
So they're creating these seemingly normal groups,
Right.
like clubs or charities, but secretly they're pulling the strings to push their agenda. Sneaky, right?
You sneaky.
So how do they manage to control these organizations without raising suspicion?
Well, it all starts with identifying individuals who are already influential within these existing groups.
Okay.
These folks, the manual calls them internal cadres,
Okay.
become their undercover agents,
Got it.
subtly steering the group's activities and aligning them with the movement's goals.
Wait, so they're finding those influential people within groups and turning them into undercover agents for their cause.
Yes.
Talk about a long game.
It's a brilliant strategy.
Yeah.
They're slowly but surely building a network of support within these organizations,
Right.
essentially creating a shadow network of power.
They're basically hijacking these groups, turning them into megaphones for their own message.
Yeah,
This is all starting to sound a bit Machiavellian.
it is.
And speaking of manipulation,
Right.
the manual goes even further into how they infiltrate and control mass meetings.
Oh, absolutely. This is where it gets really interesting.
Mm.
They talk about planting agitators within crowds
Right.
to basically orchestrate the whole event.
Okay.
We're talking chanting slogans, stirring up emotions,
Yeah.
even provoking violence to make it seem like there's massive unrest against the regime.
Wow. They're going full Hollywood on this.
Yeah,
Staging events, creating drama. It's all about putting on a show to win over the crowd.
absolutely.
It makes you wonder,
Yeah.
are there modern-day equivalents of these EPAs?
Oh, for sure.
Who are the influencers shaping our opinions today?
No, that's a question worth pondering, isn't it?
It is.
It seems some things never really change,
Right.
just the methods of delivery.
And it all comes down to controlling the narrative. They even talk about creating a whip effect within the population.
The whip effect.
What exactly does that mean?
Imagine a whip cracking,
Okay.
that sudden, forceful change.
Yeah.
That's what they're aiming for.
Okay.
Building so much pressure that the old regime just snaps.
Got it.
It's about creating this sense that change is inevitable,
Yeah.
that the current government is on its way out and something new is about to begin.
It's like they're building a psychological pressure cooker.
Exactly.
And once that pressure reaches a boiling point,
Yeah,
boom, revolution.
exactly.
Wow.
All these tactics, from cultivating influential spokespeople to staging dramatic events, are all geared towards building that psychological momentum, that
Yeah.
feeling that the tide is turning. It's fascinating stuff.
It is fascinating.
Right.
Pretty powerful stuff.
It is. It is.
Yeah, it really makes you think.
Yeah, it does. It's fascinating how this manual delves into the individual psychology of a guerrilla fighter as well. It goes beyond just combat training and tactics.
Mm-hmm.
They're really emphasizing this concept of political awareness.
So it's not enough to just be a good soldier and
Oh.
follow orders.
Right.
They need their fighters to really buy into the cause, right?
Exactly. It's about instilling a deep understanding of why they're fighting,
Yeah.
what their goals are,
Mm-hmm.
and how their actions contribute to the bigger picture.
So we're not just talking about blindly following a leader,
Right.
but about creating individuals who can critically think
Mm-hmm.
and articulate the movement's ideals.
That's the key. They want fighters who can persuade, who
Yeah.
can debate,
Mm-hmm.
and who genuinely believe in the cause.
Right.
Remember, they see the population as their primary target,
Yeah.
and influencing their minds is crucial to their success.
So it's almost like they're creating a sales force, but instead of products,
Right.
they're selling a revolution.
I like that analogy.
And every good salesperson needs to believe in what they're selling, right?
And to cultivate this deep-seated belief,
All right.
they emphasize group discussions and self-criticism sessions.
Interesting. So it's not just about individual conviction.
Right.
It's about fostering a sense of collective purpose,
Exactly.
sort of like a support group for revolutionaries.
Exactly. They use these sessions to reinforce their ideology, build camaraderie,
Okay.
and create a unified sense of purpose.
Got it.
It strengthens their resolve and makes them more effective in spreading their message.
It makes sense. If you're going to risk your life for a cause,
Right.
you better believe in it wholeheartedly. And they're very strategic about the messaging too, right?
Yeah.
Always framing the conflict as a fight for freedom and well-being.
Abdul explicitly instructs the guerrillas to constantly portray the Sandinistas as the oppressors
Okay.
who are denying people basic rights and opportunities.
Playing the underdog card.
Right.
Classic.
It's a narrative that's been used throughout history to mobilize support and rally people against a common enemy.
And it can be incredibly effective.
It can.
But remember we talked about armed propaganda earlier?
Yeah.
It's not enough to just talk about freedom.
Right.
They need to demonstrate it.
They do.
They need to show the population that they're not just another armed group that will terrorize them.
Right. They're walking a tightrope here.
Yeah.
They have to be strong and decisive, but not come off as threatening or intimidating.
It's a delicate balancing act.
It is.
And what's interesting is that the manual actually acknowledges the inherent fear associated with armed groups.
It does.
So they're not pretending that people won't be scared.
Right.
They're tackling it head on.
Exactly. They recognize that fear and try to mitigate it by constantly emphasizing their commitment to the people's well-being.
Oh.
It's like they're saying, we're not the bad guys here.
Right.
We're here to protect you.
It's all about managing perceptions.
Right.
And reassuring the population that they're the good guys, the protectors.
And a big part of that is being transparent about the use of force.
Right, because even in a liberation movement,
Right.
there will be times when violence is necessary.
The manual advises that they should be upfront about why they're using force.
Okay.
It should always be framed as a last resort, only used to protect the people from the oppressive regime.
So they're basically saying, we don't want to fight,
Right.
but we will if we have to,
Right.
and it's for your own good.
Exactly.
It's a tricky message to sell,
It is.
but I can see how it would be effective.
It is. It's all about shaping that narrative and controlling the message.
Right.
And to do that, the manual outlines some pretty specific propaganda tactics.
Like what?
Well, first off,
Okay.
simple and compelling slogans
Okay.
that resonate with people's basic needs and desires.
So instead of abstract political ideology,
Right.
they're hitting people right where it matters.
Exactly.
Their everyday struggles.
Things like, we want food, we want religious freedom,
Right.
we want fair working conditions.
Okay.
These are messages that are easy to understand and connect with emotionally.
Right.
They also suggest creating what they call nuclei.
Nuclei. Okay, now I'm curious.
Yeah.
What are these? Some kind of secret cells?
Think of them as small, hyper-motivated groups
Okay.
scattered throughout the population,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like those armed propaganda teams,
Right.
but even more undercover.
Okay.
They're responsible for spreading the movement's message
Got it.
and carrying out specific tasks,
Mm.
all very hush-hush.
So they're the ones working behind the scenes.
Right.
Planting seeds of dissent.
Yeah.
And quietly building support for the movement.
Exactly. And because they're often composed of people who have been directly affected by the regime's injustices,
Right.
their message carries a lot of weight.
It's the power of personal stories and shared experiences.
Exactly.
People are more likely to believe someone who's been through the struggle themselves.
You're catching on quick. Now, remember how we talked about controlling mass meetings?
Yeah.
They go even deeper into that in this section.
Yeah, using agitators to create a spectacle and manipulate the crowd. It's kind of sneaky, isn't it?
It is.
Making it seem like there's way more support for the movement than there actually is.
And they don't shy away from that.
Wow.
They even talk about planting rumors,
Right?
leaking false information,
Wow.
and staging events to manipulate the media
Okay.
and create a favorable narrative.
It's a reminder that perception is reality,
Absolutely.
especially in times of conflict.
Controlling the narrative can be just as important as controlling the battlefield.
Right.
And this manual proves just how sophisticated and strategic these psychological operations can be.
It's a bit unsettling to realize just how much effort goes into,
Yeah.
shaping our perceptions.
Yeah,
Even in a conflict like this.
it is.
It makes you wonder what kind of information warfare is happening right now all around us.
It definitely gives you a new perspective on the news we consume and the narratives that we're presented with every day.
It does, for sure.
Yeah.
This whole deep dive into the CIA manual has been a real eye-opener.
Yeah.
We've uncovered the intricate strategies of psychological operations and guerrilla warfare and how they can be applied in various contexts.
Right. It highlights how these tactics extend far beyond the battlefield,
Right.
influencing politics, marketing, and even our personal interactions.
Yeah.
The battle for hearts and minds is constantly being waged.
It makes you realize that we're all participants in this ongoing psychological struggle,
We are.
whether we're aware of it or not.
Precisely. But as we've learned from this manual, awareness is the first step towards resistance. By understanding these tactics, we can become more discerning consumers of information.
So how can we apply these insights to our own lives?
Yeah.
What can we take away from all of this?
The biggest takeaway is that knowledge is power.
Okay.
The more you understand about how persuasion works, the better equipped you'll be to navigate the complexities of the world around you.
Right. We're constantly bombarded with messages designed to influence our thoughts and behaviors.
We are.
It's like a never-ending stream of propaganda vying for our attention.
By recognizing those tactics and developing our critical thinking skills,
Right.
we can become more informed and empowered individuals.
Okay.
It starts with questioning everything.
Yeah.
Don't just accept the narratives you're given at face value.
Right, we need to dig deeper.
Yeah.
Consider the source of the information.
Hmm.
Look for potential biases and
Right.
seek out different perspectives.
Exactly. And remember, even in the face of overwhelming propaganda,
Right.
the power to think critically and form your own opinions is your greatest weapon.
This has been a fascinating and slightly unnerving deep dive into the world of psychological warfare.
It is.
It's a reminder that the battle for our minds is very real, and it's happening all around us.
Something to think about.
Thanks for listening.